I am so old that I can remember back when people used to release this thing in cinemas called comedies. People would actually pay tickets, go to a cinema and laugh in a group. Anyone who can name a comedy that's come out recently is a liar because they make them as often as Paul Walker appears in Fast and the Furious sequels. Get it? That's a hilarious joke because he's dead. Of course, we have today amassed a roundtable. Speaking of comedies, Judd Apatow is a writer, and Christian isn't. So, but
these are all facts.
True. So, Christian, why don't you say hello to all these hilarious fans of ours?
I'm honored anytime Hughezy asks me to be a part of the show, but I always ask how many tits are there going to be on the show? As long as it's 4, I'm in.
Mm-hmm. That is so vulgar because they have 2 arses as well. So somebody needs to grow up. Speaking of big giant tits, though, Lemmi, of course, is joining us. Lemmi, how are you doing today, Hong Kong?
Me and my tits are doing fantastic today.
Nice. And of course, speaking of tits and arses, we have once over with Cayley. Cayley, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling like laughing.
See? Told you, Lemmi.
Well, then I can think of 4 movies you shouldn't watch.
I can think of more than that.
In true Judd Apatow form, this episode has started off quite interesting, but it's going to taper off really quickly and then last another 30 minutes after we're already bored. So no time like the present. I don't get it either. We're going to start with his debut. Now, even though he'd been in the TV and film industry for well over a decade, he didn't release his own first directorial film. That means he was the director, Lemmi. Just thought I'd help you out with that one. 2005's 40-Year-Old Virgin. Lemmi, you're the furthest thing from a virgin here. What did you think of 40-Year-Old Virgin, Honk?
I think it was one of the more funny ones that didn't have a bunch of useless scenes that took forever. It's one of the very few Judd Apatow movies that I enjoyed all the way through. And a point that I'm probably going to make throughout every single assessment of each one of these movies is that the supporting actors were far more funnier than any of the starring actors.
Yeah, Seth Rogen was in this one, and in it he played a stoner-legged back guy that plays by his own rules. What are the chances of him ever doing that again? Cayley, 40-Year-Old Virgin, what did ye think of it?
So I am going to disagree for the most part with Lemmi on this one. I don't like this movie. I know.
Ooh.
I know. Ooh. I think that Judd Apatow is cliche. I think he was cliche before we knew what comedy cliches were. And that was why it became that much worse. I think that he relies on crude humor. I like crude humor. I like dick and butt jokes. They are funny. And fart jokes, I love them. They're great. But it's just like, oh, look at this. I'm going to make a joke and it's going to be so funny. Let's do a scene where a guy gets waxed. Whoa, it's going to be hilarious.
What about farts? Do they work for you?
Yeah, hilarious, usually.
Then you're going to like Lemmy's joke halfway through the episode. Christian, what was your take of 40-Year-Old Virgin?
Well, I think we were aware of who he was from, like you said, TV work and writing and things before that. But this is the first time we saw him. So we didn't have anything to compare it to. And I thought that this movie was fun and it was very funny. I agree with Cayley's point that in general and in theory, a man getting waxed shouldn't be so funny. But I guess because everybody knew going into it that they were really waxing Steve Carell and the other actors weren't even supposed to be in the scene, but they wanted to watch for real. I think letting, a lot of times if it looks like people are having fun making a movie, then it's not very good. And I think we'll hit a couple of those in this one. I think that scene works because the other guys are legitimately horrified and upset by it. And to Lemmy's point, that his movies always have stuff that doesn't belong there. But it's Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen just going back and forth. You know how I know you're gay? none of that needs to be in there, but it's probably some of the funniest stuff in the movie. And Hughezy, has Judd Apatow apologized for that scene yet? It is, it's a long time ago now, and the word "gay" isn't funny anymore.
Yeah, well, speaking of gay, I'll give my opinion on this one. I actually really liked it at the time. I didn't want to like it because it's called The 40-Year-Old Virgin. And interesting thing about this cast member, Stormy Daniels is in it. Whatever happened to her? Spoiler alert, she shows her in this one. I bet no one would have believed that. And do you remember the two Indian guys? Well, one of them is in prison for murder.
Oh. Was that podcast Serial about that guy?
No, but
it's an American joke. Don't worry about
it. But I do think that what he did to that woman is funnier than Judd Apatow's more recent output, mostly because it's a woman. 40-Year-Old Virgin also made the mistake of using that song "Heat of the Moment" by Asia, the most 50% song of all time, because you hear the intro to it and you think this is going to be fucking incredible. And then the chorus kicks in and it's like, oh, this is like some Third Rock from the Sun fucking background music shite. And of course, Catherine Keener was in it, who looks exactly like Howard Stern.
Catherine Keener was my favorite part of this movie. I think that the place where it really lost me is that I don't think that Judd Apatow has a good understanding of how to meld absurd stories with realistic ones. And I think that he tries to do that here. So in his earlier TV shows like Freaks and Geeks, we got just a sincere story with sincere characters. And here it's like, well, what if a guy was a 40-year-old virgin? And then what would happen? But also make it a little bit sweet.
It's just funny you mentioned Freaks and Geeks, because in that one, Seth Rogen played a stoner guy that lived life by his own rules. And you never really get to see him do that anymore. But also with the 40-Year-Old Virgin, I had a problem with Andy, not because he lived next door to black people. Let me finish. But there was a bit when it showed you him in his private life, and he's reading comics alone and playing the computer alone, which I don't see how that makes him a freak. But then it shows him doing karaoke alone in his house. Who does that?
Definitely not me, Hughezy.
Yeah, me neither. Totally, I don't do that.
Who needs a karaoke machine when you're singing "Heat of the Moment" by Asia? And 2 piss boner scenes. Lemmi, did you think it needed both scenes or more?
I think it needed a few more, in my opinion. The piss boner scenes are always funny to me, mostly because I don't have a dick. So
allegedly,
yeah,
allegedly, of course.
But I also think it's kind of weird that if you regularly have a piss boner in the morning, how can you piss in your face every time? Like, shouldn't you, like, maybe at some minute wake up and think, oh, I'll wait. I'll watch Behind the Music for a minute and let it go down, and then I'll go take my piss instead of, I'll piss right in my face before a workout. Oh, my God. But also, I don't mean to be vulgar, but the daughter of Catherine Keener in the film has, and this is going to sound sexist, big giant tits.
Well, I'm glad you've you noticed the important details, Hughezy. That is what matters about the film.
Oh, definitely. And there's one black person in it. Right, Lemmi?
Yes, there is one black person. I almost forgot about that guy, actually.
Yeah. Lemmi actually wanted to steal Stuttering John's film title and rename this one Too Many when she's seen him. Right, Lemmi? She's from Florida. Speaking of unprotected sex, get it? Up next is 2007's Knocked Up. Kristen, you have children, which means you've done it.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
Verified 2 times to completion, yes.
Oh, right in the pussy. That's the way it's done. I've been reading online.
Yeah.
Everybody does it.
We tried 14 times the other way, and then eventually I read somewhere that she wasn't going to get pregnant that way. So I was like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to be on your back this time.
Yeah, I thought you meant she was fucking you. But
That's it.
2007's Knocked Up. In this one, Seth Rogen plays a stoner guy that sort of lives life by his own rules. I liked it. And what made this one interesting is he also had Jonah Hill and Jason Segel and other actors who lived with them. And they were stoner characters that lived life by their own rules, which was really unique because you sort of think, how did they come up with this? This is changing the game as we know it. But Christian, as we mentioned, you've had sex. What did you think of Knocked Up?
Well, I went to see this movie with my now wife, and I think it gave me another probably 10 years before we had to have kids. So I appreciated that very much. So I'll always be indebted to Judd Apatow for that. But I remember that my thought was that this movie was fun and actually very funny. Just a little dash of sweet, as he tried to do with 40-Year-Old Virgin. And I remember being surprised that I wasn't entirely put off by Katherine Heigl, which I feel like I should have been. But I think she worked in this movie. And this would be an example of what Lemmi talks about, where some of the supporting characters are more interesting. And I will spoil things and say not so interesting that they should have gotten their own movie. But I thought that the cast was good. I thought for the most part, this is the one where they go to Vegas, or is that the other one?
Yeah, near the end.
Get high in Vegas. Yeah. I don't, again, sequences that aren't necessary. But if they pay off, it doesn't matter. The first Hangover is filled with those and they work. This is kind of more like Hangover 4, if there was one.
Lemmi, what did you think of Knocked Up?
I really enjoyed Knocked Up. I remember watching it back when it came out. I loved it then. I rewatched it. I loved it again. It's a very sweet movie, and it is funny. And I love Jason, the guy who played Marshall or whatever. I will watch him in literally everything. But as somebody who has given birth, it made me want to do it again. I loved being pregnant. I loved watching the journey between the two people that didn't know each other have to get to know each other. You know what I mean? I thought the whole story was just very sweet. However, it was where I noticed that each scene felt like it was 2 or 3 minutes too long.
I just love so much Hughezy and Christian's faces to Lemmi saying that this made her want to give birth again, because I'm sure that the graphic birthing scene was wonderful for you guys.
Yeah.
So I've seen it up close. Apatow didn't even come close to it. What I was actually thinking when Lemmi said that was Hughezy might not be able to get hard for an entire week, or at least for 4 hours. I'm not sure which one.
True.
Yeah, and just for scientific clarification, no birthing woman's pussy is that hairless. None.
I can neither confirm nor deny if Lemmy's correct. I have no opinion on the matter.
Of course, watching this film made Lemmi want to get pregnant again, which is kind of awkward when you realize that she watches Mississippi Burning twice a week. Cayley, what was your opinion of Knocked Up?
So I like Knocked Up more than I like 40-Year-Old Virgin, but I still don't like it. I think that a lot of what Judd Apatow gets away with is because people are nostalgic for things like Freaks and Geeks. I think that he, at this point in his career, he was trying very hard to give all of his friends who were on Freaks and Geeks an opportunity to succeed. And he obviously did that because now everybody's successful as all fuck. But it didn't capture for me like the nice meld of comedy and relationships that Freaks and Geeks did. So for me, this movie, it like completely removed the passion and joy from sex. I thought that it was like at best superficial social commentary. I do agree there are funny moments. I'm not saying that I'm not laughing. It's a comedy. I laugh, but especially Martin Starr, I think he was awesome in this. But it just doesn't work for me.
Well, can you go back to the part about how there's supposed to be passion and joy in sex?
Yeah.
I'm almost 50 years old, so this is the first time I'm hearing about this.
I'm sorry, it's only utilitarian. You're right. I was
Oh,
wrong.
thank you.
I'm
All
sorry.
right.
I definitely know what that word means. I just choose not to say what it means. Right, Lemmy?
Right.
So, but with Knocked Up, I really liked it. But ironically, the person who didn't like it was Katherine Heigl herself.
Mhm.
She bashed it for being sexist because the woman get pregnant in it, and all the funny shit happened with the guys. But then again, who really wants a slapstick comedy of a pregnant woman slipping on banana peels and all this hilarious Stifler shit type happening? All in all, I like Knocked Up, but the crazy thing is that back in the day, they used to sell these thing called DVDs where you could actually go buy a streaming service title but hold it, then never have to pay for it again because it's right here. But then, of course, nobody wants to listen to me about that. They'd rather pay every month for a film that they'll watch once a year. So you're paying 12 times a year for something really good like Horrible Bosses 2. But when you watch the making of the original cut of this film, had to have been like 4 hours long. And then they also filmed the spoof documentaries during it. Like, it's completely insane. This, I think, was a perfect example of when Judd Apatow's success started going to his head. And while this was a box office hit and very profitable, from then on, everything was way too long, like, which we'll get into soon. But all in all, I really liked Knocked Up. But I'm getting really annoyed how in films it's usually people getting drunk on beer. I really don't think Seth Rogen could get Katherine Heigl drunk on a couple of beers enough that she would take him home for some bareback banging, right, Lemmy? Like, at least do some shots, at least drink some fucking whiskey. Let's not go, oh, I've had the lightest drink in the bar. Let's get them open and don't wear that bag. Right, Lemmy?
Is it?
I don't know, man. I'm probably the wrong person to ask because 2 beers will knock me right on my ass, man.
Yeah, the same thing with my wife, and so there's proof that she got drunk twice. But in the 4-hour cut, was there a chance that perhaps Seth Rogen roofied Katherine Heigl? Would that make more sense to you, Hughezy?
That would be really good and funnier than The Bubble.
Yes.
I'm so glad that's the last movie we have to talk about. I don't. The one thing I'll say is the very ending of this movie stuck with me. So both times I was driving a newborn child home from the hospital, only a few minutes away. I did think about how slow they drove in this movie at the end, and I was like, "Oh yeah, watch this. I'm going to drive even slower."
As fun as Knocked Up was, what I thought would have made it even funnier was if somebody in it had cancer, which brings us to the next film. The $75 million budgeted, no joke, Funny People. I gotta be honest, I like this film, but again, I bought the Blu-ray, and in it they mentioned that the original cut was 3.5 hours long. Like, that's longer than fucking Wolf of Wall Street, Fast X, equally good films like that. And I just think that it's insane. And as much as I like Adam Sandler, I don't know if he was the right guy for this. It should have been somebody like Tom Cruise who could actually act. But what did you think of Funny People, Cayley?
Well, I will say, so Apatow and Sandler had known each other for years. They were like college roommates or something. And they were such good friends that one of the things that I really appreciated in this movie was that Apatow let Sandler make out with his real life wife. That was just a really beautiful moment in this movie. But I actually do like this one. I think that this is a complete film. I think that it does better than 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up for me because we get to see like an actual progression. It's more dramatic. It's something different. It feels like a movie.
Get to see the hilarious bit where Jonah Hill turns up, and see, that's one of the thing is, because it's about stand-up comedians, you can tell that there's rejected stand-up material put in the film. Where like at one point at Jonah Hill, there's people speaking in the kitchen, and he just like Kramer walks through the door and does a joke about Harry Potter 6. Says, "Oh, they're gonna have to start calling him Harold Potter." Right? See?
Hilarious.
Well, there's this part of the conversation has brought to mind two things. Hughezy, are you trying to convince me that the version of this movie that I remember watching wasn't 3.5 hours? You're saying that was not the actual runtime.
Yeah, it was a 2-hour film edited down to 3.5.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how that works. And to Cayley's point, whenever you have any kind of, when you're telling a story, a fictionalized story about musicians, comedians, actors, the on-screen stuff has to be so good, that Aaron Sorkin's show, Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, was basically about Saturday Night Live. Comedy on that show could not have been less funny. You could tell it was written by Aaron Sorkin. There were no jokes. The stand-up in here, it's very average. You're like, how are any of these people successful? Seth Rogen's stand-up was not supposed to be so good because he's an up-and-comer. But the joke that he stole from Sandler was like, all right, I don't know how he was even going to pay you for that. But ultimately, this movie was where I started to realize something that is in all of his films. And I enjoyed this movie through the first 2 acts. And then when he starts running around trying to steal his ex away from her present life, and I'm like, I don't know what kind of wish fulfillment this is. I mean, I guess maybe he wants, Sandler to fuck him and watch. I couldn't figure out any of this. And I mean, look, you could do worse than watching Eric Bana found your wife. But at the same time, I was just like, how is this the same movie? It's not even close to the same movie. So part of the movie that's funny about funny people, I enjoyed that. The last part, I was like, when is this going to end? And thankfully, one day it did.
And speaking of the cast, the hilarious thing when you think about it is that it's about Adam Sandler having cancer. But the funny part is Norm Macdonald had a cameo, and he actually did have cancer during the filming of it.
Norm would think that's very funny, actually.
It is when you think about it. Sarah Silverman is in it in a cameo, and of course she had sex.
You already said cancer. I don't know why you mentioned it again.
I just wanted to mention that Kevin Brennan had sex with an underage girl. Lemmi, what did you think of Funny People?
I hated Funny People.
Oh,
I hated it. It felt like the movie lasted literally all day. You know what I mean? And I can't stand movies like that. It's hard for me to follow that. Yeah, I can't stand movies like that. It's hard for me to follow movies like that, especially when you flip the script 2/3 the way of the movie. Like Christian said, the beginning of that movie was not anywhere, like it didn't have anything to do with each other. You know what I mean? What kind of movie is this? This is not funny. And I also agree with what Hughezy said. It was a bunch of filler stand-up comedian jokes. I saw the same thing in, spoiler alert, Trainwreck, where it's just each scene was like Amy Schumer trying to fucking do her stand-up routine. And that's just how Funny People felt to me. It was just awful. I hated that movie. I will never watch that movie again.
Yeah, and also with Funny People, this was really when Judd Apatow's whole career started to go off the rails, because for a while it seemed like he had at least 5 to 6 film releases per year that he was either writing or producing, and then he had multiple TV shows on. He had a film that he produced called The 5-Year Engagement, which was so long that it felt like I was watching it in real time. Like it was just like it just went on, and the Lord of the Rings had less endings in the fucking 5-Year Engagement. Thankfully, though, he spends a lot of time on a very important thing in this film. His kids, vital to every film he's been in. And the great thing is he'll speak out about white supremacy in Hollywood, yet he'll Nepo baby his kids all day long into a quite controversial part in The Bubble, which we will talk about soon, quite awkwardly. But I liked it, but at the same time, I get why people didn't like Funny People, and not because there's so many Jewish people in it. Right, Lemmi?
Right.
You know what I didn't get, though, about Funny People that I had never realized before we decided to do this is that both in Funny People and in Knocked Up, he's making references to Everybody Loves Raymond. Why does he love Everybody Loves Raymond so much? In Funny People, it's the Eminem scene, and then in Knocked Up, Paul Rudd makes some like, marriage is like an episode of Everybody Loves Raymond, but it doesn't last just 22 minutes.
By the way, did you ever see that episode? Not to get off on a tangent here. This is great stuff. Where he's trying to have a relaxing day in his house, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to relax today." And then his family walks through the door, and he goes, "Oh, I guess I can't relax." Did you ever see that episode?
It's hilarious.
Right?
It's funny you mentioned
episode.
it. That's the only episode I like in the whole show is that one that you described. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that last night at the clan rally, and it was like Lemmi was there, and I was like, "This is such good writing." Like, what about if I was always thinking, what about if one episode he did this thing where he closed the door, and like it could have took the show in a whole direction, but instead they did 9 seasons of that gold. So yeah, I don't think I like Funny People anymore. I'm in a bad mood, and that fucking Eminem scene is horrific for 2 reasons. One, I hate Eminem. I think he's shit, and 2, Adam Sandler's wearing a body warmer over a t-shirt. Why are you trying to keep your body warm if you're wearing clothes that cools your body down? This is fucking insane. It's like going to the bar and saying, "I'll have a non-alcoholic beer, please." It's like, well, just don't have a drink, have water. No, I'd rather, it's like, no.
I believe that wardrobe choice by Sandler is the same reason for every wardrobe choice for him for the last 15 years. Man tits.
Oh. That being
Which, by the way, just I want to go on record. Those are my least favorite kind of tits.
yeah. Well, Olivia Newton-John would vote differently on that one. But the thing about Funny People, I have to say, is that if they made a merman film, I would go see it. Lemmi?
I'd probably go see it.
There we go. Up next is a sequel of sorts to Knocked Up. Thank God, the film that everybody wanted to follow up on. This is 40. I'm going to be 40 in December, so I've got to be honest with you. The joke around this one is that this is 40 minutes too long, but this is an hour and 40 minutes too long. This film is something like 2 hours, 20 minutes. At least 11 of those minutes add to the plot. There's all this stuff about record labels and fucking the wife, somebody who works for the wife's stores stealing stuff. And it's like, what's any of this got to do with anything? That shithead from Green Day's in it. And I've got news for you. Green Day stinks, much like Eminem. Fucking rubbish. Was not a fan of This Is 40 at all. Apart from, I bought it on Blu-ray. I got it cheap. There's a scene where, I should have said, an outtake reel where Paul Rudd repeatedly farted one day during a scene. That's hilarious. Farts are funny. If Donald Trump farted during a presidential rally, everybody would vote for him, and you know you would. Christian, what did you think of This Is 40? Sorry, This Is 40. Hilarious.
Yeah, I remember seeing it at the time and not being 40 yet, which that is obviously a long time ago. And I didn't have the family concerns and all that stuff as of yet. And then when I got older, people started watching it and saying like, "Oh, I finally got around to watching This Is 40. It was great." And that's when I realized all these people are idiots. Just because you can relate to what's happening in the movie doesn't mean that the movie's good. Getting back to Mississippi Burning. So I think that I really enjoy Paul Rudd so many times in so many movies. I even like the last Ant-Man movie. All right, I'll say it. Really only because he's in it. But I think that, if they'd done like a 20-minute featurette on the Blu-ray you're talking about for Knocked Up, and it was like, oh, let's see what their life is like at home. I would be like, oh, that's really fun. I enjoyed seeing that. To do a movie in general was already a bad idea. And I forgot how long it was until you told us. I didn't care. And this is the one where Apatow's younger daughter is like making jokes at the table. and you can just see how heavily edited it is because, spoiler alert, kids aren't funny on command. They don't learn lines well. And so every like act out was her saying something like, well, that didn't really work. But you're the director and you're her dad, and you can't say, can you give us that one again with a little bit more feeling, a little bit less hatred for your father for putting you in this movie? Had a scene with your mom and Uncle Paul Rudd. So, yeah, I think that this fails in every way, from storytelling, filmmaking. Paul Rudd's a handsome son of a bitch, so I'm never going to say anything bad about him, and I want to see those farts. But this is when it really gets to be a problem that he puts his kids in the movie. Yeah, I have not been happy with Apatow really from this point onward.
Yeah, this was his first sort of like box office failure because basically nobody was asking for this, and his kids are a pair of Lena Dunham's in it. Nobody likes her. Melissa McCarthy's in it. She looks like she's made from Paul Rudd's farts. Graham Parker is a fucking big plot hole, or sorry, big plot line. He is only in this because Judd Apatow is a fan, not because, oh, this is a good idea. It's fucking terrible. Lemmi, what did you think of Farts or Farty?
Well, by the time I watched this movie, I was so sick of seeing Leslie Mann. I got so tired of her, dude. And I thought Melissa McCarthy was one of the funniest parts of the whole fucking movie when they were sitting there with the principal and she's like, fuck you, Jill. I thought that was probably the comic relief of the movie. But the whole movie just felt like I was looking in the window of a funnier than average family. You know what I mean? And just watching them live their lives. It was a very normal life events type movie. And by the end of it, I was very, very bored of it. I really enjoyed seeing John Lithgow, though. I love him in everything. Anything.
John Lithgow walked into a bar and the barman says, "Hey, why the long face?" Get it?
Yes.
So one thing that I'll chime in with what Lemmi said is that we weren't exhausted from Melissa McCarthy's shtick at this point. So I do remember seeing it. And I do remember thinking she was funny. And I think, when Bridesmaids starts, I'm enjoying her. And by the time that movie's over, I'm like, oh, I think I'm gonna tap out on this this woman.
Yeah, and I forgot to be vulgar to Lemmi twice during this episode. Hey, Lemmi, how about the 40-year-old virgin and I'll owe you 29? Okay.
But
and what about this is 40 and I'll owe you 29?
Even better.
See? But this was also, I've just remembered a scene because Judd Apatow's films are, they do loads of takes and they improvise the dialogue. But this is when it started becoming obvious that instead of him selecting the best improvisation, he's actually taken all of the improv he likes and put them in the one scene. Because there's a scene where Jason Segel's back from Knocked Up, and he's now the personal trainer for Leslie Mann, which should be a good surname for Stuttering John's daughter. And in it, her friend is training with them, and they start talking about how her legs feel for 2.5 minutes. It's like, this is fucking ridiculous. This should not be happening. But nobody cares what I think. I have AIDS. I just noticed Cayley's wearing the shirt from Mandy, which is fucking amazing. But what was your take on This Is 40?
I hated this one. It felt like a series of vignettes strung together. It was just complete garbage. I felt similarly to how Lemmi was describing, like looking in a window at a somewhat funnier than average family. But for me, it was just so uncomfortable. It felt to me like I was going over to my friend's house and then my friend is getting into a really, really annoying fight with their spouse. But I can leave that situation. This movie, I can turn it off. And in exactly the same way that I want to leave when my friends start fighting, I don't want to watch this movie. It feels like miserable married people. And I will agree also, Melissa McCarthy, shockingly good. I think that her ad-libbing in the credits is probably one of the best parts of the movie.
Yeah, because that meant the film was over. Oh,
yeah, true.
Oh, I hope.
But do you know for me, probably the only good part about this movie, like the only person who was really successful was Megan Fox was being hot, and she is good at that, and she did great.
I got news for you. She's not on my list.
Whoa.
Yeah. I mean, I would take a beach. I'm not going to be rude. That's how women are. Oh, and speaking of, Leslie Mann gives a beach in this. Lemmi. You know?
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But
there was only one part I wanted to see in that movie, and it never happened. I wanted to, you know how Leslie Mann gets pregnant at the end of the film? I wanted the end credits being like, it's a boy, so Paul Rudd could have a fucking boy in the family for goddamn once. You know what I mean? That's what I wanted to see, and I never got it, so I just left that movie feeling very unfulfilled.
And the other thing is, like, if you're going to make a film about somebody who's going into middle age, is Paul Rudd really the one you want to cast? Like, even today, over a decade or more later, he still looks like he's in his early 30s. Like, he doesn't have any grey. He's got the full long hair. He's still in shape. So how are we meant to go, oh, it must be shit to be Paul Rudd?
I think that's on
this
purpose.
is before this was before he'd ever done any training to be a superhero. So, you know, he's even better now is what I agree to.
And the
I think they did that
Ghostbuster.
on purpose. I think they did that on purpose because in Knocked Up, if you remember, she was like, I get uglier every year and he just keeps looking better and better every year. It's not fair.
Mm.
So I think it's appropriate that he looked, you know, more distinguished in his age or whatever.
Well, it is true. She is an ugly woman.
Think about all the roles that she stole from Cheryl Hines just because she was married to Judd Apatow. Like every role she has, you're like, oh, Cheryl Hines would actually be better in this.
Well, Cheryl Hines may soon be married to the president. If people can stop making fun of his voice.
If my 10 votes in California will be counted, then you know, we'll be that much closer to President RFK Jr. and his shaky voice.
Well, don't get too excited because at the minute, Judd Apatow, his next project is This Is 50. So
are you serious, or are you just
Yeah.
fucking with me right now?
that's the one he's trying to get made next. But here's the scoop that will apparently Judd Apatow recently has fired his agent and his manager because he cannot get stuff greenlit anymore because nobody makes comedies. And Paul Rudd unfortunately had Ant-Man 3 and the most recent Ghostbusters, which were like average hits to flops. So it's like your biggest star isn't pulling in the crowds. Leslie Mann's unattractive. People actively don't like your kids, which is extra awkward after the bubble. We'll get to that soon. So This Is 50 will be coming out soon, and then I'll owe you 19, Lemmi. Speaking of bomb jokes, we have got the king of all bomb comedy, Amy Schumer's Trainwreck. Cayley, what did you think of Trainwreck?
Lemmi already hinted at this, but this movie is trash. It is Amy Schumer doing her own stand-up. Amy Schumer wrote it, and it feels like she did, and I hate it. No, that's it. That's it. I hate this movie. I hate it.
Well, let me make fun of another woman too. Lemmi, how did you think of Trainwreck?
I will agree with Cayley. It was like watching 2 hours of a fat chick masturbating, and I hated it. I fucking hated it.
I wish that's what it was. I'd be watching it every day if it was 2 hours of a fat chick masturbating.
Yeah. Christian, how was your Trainwreck?
So I am gonna have the hot take. No, I don't think that this movie was very good, but I did not hate her going into this movie. I actually was happy that she got a movie because she used to be on Stern all the time, and the background to the story of how this movie gets made is more interesting than the film itself. Is that Apatow's on the way to a meeting, hears her on Stern, and he just sits in the car and finishes listening. And he's like, I got to make a movie with this chick. Now, I think if he saw what the movie would be, maybe he would have thought twice, or maybe that's really why he fired his agents. But I think that this is the first time you see her playing this character. There's a Hulu show with her and Michael Cera where she's still playing this character, so it's not as much fun to watch, even with Michael Rappaport in it. But I agree with everything that has been said. It's just like, okay, she's working stand-up bits in here. I like Bill Hader. He's so weird looking. It's always hard to see him playing a normal person. Like Barry was the perfect show for him because you're like, yeah, this guy obviously is an assassin for hire, with tremendous mental trauma. I think that all makes sense. And I think that you have some. This is another one where it's like, oh, hey, remember that scene with John Cena? He's good in it, so you can remember a lot of things where it's like the main cast isn't necessarily what you think about. And I think Colin Quinn played her dad, if I'm remembering this movie correctly. So I was happy for Colin, but at the end of the day, I wasn't like, oh, this is a great movie. It's more like, oh, there's parts that I don't hate, and it's almost like Judd fell into those parts by accident. I don't know how he's friends with John Cena, but clearly he is, for being part of a movie that we'll talk about a little bit later.
I gotta be honest that I liked this ish at the time because I'm a big fan of science fiction, and that's what it was when John Cena and Bill Hader would be attracted to Amy Schumer. Like that bit when Amy Schumer was cheating on him at the start with a selection of guys, and there's Bob Kelly who thought he was gay, but Amy Schumer's so good looking that he got attracted to her. Fucking Jim Florentine was in it. Ooh. And then fucking John Cena, as we mentioned, who gets so upset that she broke up with him. It's like, and if you'd have seen the woman he was engaged to at the time, she was a female wrestler called Nikki Bella. I would fucking kill Judd Apatow's kids for a chance to get rejected by her. Yet we're supposed to believe that John Cena would walk through New York City all upset because multiple guys were going after fat bitch, unfunny, ugly, sweaty looking Amy Schumer. And then one of the dumbest things I've ever fucking seen in a comedy, and this is when I first sort of realized like this is truly shit, where for no specific reason Bill Hader has broke up with Amy Schumer. He goes to speak to the basketball player whose name I can't remember. What's it? LeBron James, who's also sitting there with Matthew Broderick playing himself and some sports commentator guy who then does commentary on Matthew Broderick and LeBron James talking to Bill Hader about how he used to get back with her. And at that time, I was sitting there thinking, I wish I was at a screening of The Dark Knight Rises in 2012. This is embarrassing. I'd rather walk out of there with under my arm, and I would feel less embarrassed than going to see this shit, this stupid fucking pile of shit film. I wished I had whatever Colin Quinn died from in it. Spoiler alert. Terrible. And then, don't let me get ready for the real joke. This is some good stuff. She dances with the LA cheerleader sports team. But here's the funny thing. Get ready for it. She messes up the final move. Huh? That's good stuff, right, Lemmi?
I hate this fucking movie so much.
Do you know what's crazy about this movie also? If I remember correctly, this came out the same week as Ant-Man. So it was like Paul Rudd versus Apatow. Like it was like, and it must have been so embarrassing for Judd to have to say, oh, this is what I'm doing at the same time that you are finally officially part of something gigantic.
Yeah. But it's funny you mentioned that because I've watched interviews with him talking about this film, and he's pretty much mentioned that at the time, because Funny People was very expensive and it wasn't a big hit. And then This Is 40 flopped. So he badly needed a hit. So it was like he was almost sort of making a stunt film where he's like, okay, we'll put LeBron James in it. He's very popular. John Cena will figure out a way to put him in it. That fucking Pete Davidson had his film debut in it. Guess what? In that scene he was in, Pete Davidson played a stoner guy that lived life by his own rules. I couldn't believe how funny that was. Like, it was really like this guy deserves to lose a parent. Am I right or what?
What I was going to say about the sports commentator Marv Albert, does it change your opinion to know that here in the U.S. he spent a few years being disgraced for it being revealed that he was a crossdresser? Do you have a new appreciation for him as a talent now that I tell you that?
I want to see up his skirt so badly. Speaking of being seen up skirts, there was then in 2020. Not many people heard about this. There was a pandemic which locked down cinemas. We couldn't go see anything, not even, we could go see Bad Boys 3, so it wasn't all bad. And thankfully, Jumanji 5 came out in 2019, so we got to see the end of the Jumanji saga. Whew. But it meant everything that was being delayed by a year or going straight to streaming, thankfully, it was all worth it. It was so well worth it. So many people died during that time. We didn't get to see them because to make up for it, we got the King of Staten Island. Cayley, what was your opinion on this absolute classic?
I love this movie. This is my favorite, Judd. I know. Everybody hates me so much right now. Everybody's faces. It's fine. I love this movie. I think that it is good, dark humor. I think that Pete Davidson did good in it. I think it's an odyssey. I think that something that Judd is really successful at is creating scenes with dialogue between friends that feels real and connectable and relatable. And that happens in this movie. I love this one. I think it's absolutely great. I saw an interesting interview around when this came out between Pete Davidson and Judd at, I always want to say Apatow, but it's Apatow. So every time I struggle on that name, that's why. I saw an interview of the two of them where both of them were getting interviewed, and the interviewer asked them, "What's your favorite movie that the other person did?" And Pete said that his favorite movie of Judd's was The Cable Guy. And I love that so much because that's literally just a movie that Judd produced. So you don't even like him as a director. You don't even like him as a writer. So I would like to thank the producers from The King of Staten Island. There's like 15 of them, but I think that they all made a great movie.
Well, if anybody knows comedy, it's Pete Davidson. Excuse me, I'm choking on my own rage. Lemmi, what did you think of The King of Staten Island?
I felt a lot like This Is 40. I felt like I was a voyeur peeking in on an incredibly dysfunctional family, and I was waiting for the funny, and the funny never or very rarely came. And by the end of it, I wanted to delete my own Minecraft profile, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Christian, what did you think of The King of Staten Island?
Well, the fundamental problem with this movie is sort of, you're talking about its release. So it came out during the pandemic, and I would have to go through the credit card records, but my recollection is that I believe my wife and I spent $20 just to rent this and watch it at home. So the standards were far too high. I never really gave it a chance. I like seeing Bill Burr in a movie where he was, shocker, playing Bill Burr, and I in an episode where I've already told Hughezy that I didn't always, and I don't really hate Amy Schumer. I don't hate Pete Davidson either, and I think that we spend way too much time with him and his problems. And yes, he's a stoner who plays by his own rules, but he's added the layer of suicidal, like real life. So we have that. Which, but let's not forget about the amazing performance as the guy at the restaurant from The Great Rich Voss, the legend, where he can't actually get his line out and they leave it in the movie. So that's really what I remember this movie for. But I remember thinking this movie was a Judd Apatow movie in that it was okay. I liked most of the people in it, but it was way too long. And by the time it was over, I didn't care how it ended. I just wanted it to stop.
Yeah, I remember watching King of Staten Island and really getting my hopes up because the opening scene was Pete Davidson trying to kill himself, and I was praying this was the making of, because that's how I felt afterwards. So what I didn't understand with the suicide stuff is that so we're meant to feel sorry for a guy who tries to kill himself on the highway during speeding traffic. It's like so you would then crash into a car that may have a cute baby in it or some nice dogs, and that's how we're meant to feel sorry for you. He's a dickhead, and he looks like he rubs his eyes with shit. And then there's the bit where he's trying to get a job, and he goes into a tattoo parlor, and he insults the guy for putting a swastika tattoo on someone. So we get to learn that not only is he a stoner that lives by his own rules, but he's not a racist. Oof. And then, I hated the King of Staten Island because, as I mean, I liked earlier Judd Apatow, and it just made you realize this guy is a dickhead. He's an arsehole. He's a piece of shit, and he's a wanker. And I don't specifically know how you can be all those things separately, but he was. Hated this, and this was another one of those films I watched at home during the pandemic that made me want to fucking Pete Davidson myself. Because have you ever seen the film? It's called Yesterday. It's a Danny Boyle film.
Yes.
It is fucking. Oh, I wish that I was at the top floor of the Twin Towers on 9/11, holding a fucking bag of exploding bombs. Because if you haven't seen it, Lemmy, it's about a guy who wakes up in a world where the Beatles never existed. So he's the only guy that knows about it. And it's just that I'm watching this. It's like, what the fuck is this? I already lived that fucking life. Everybody loves shit. What am I talking about Judd Apatow for? It's nearly an hour, and it's all it does is made me angry. He's really shit. Yeah, I did not like the King of Staten Island. Lemmy?
I didn't like it either.
Yeah. And what's Lemmy, do you think Pete Davidson's good looking?
No.
I tell you something else that annoyed me about this film. So I have a thing where I don't like playing with my phone when I'm watching something. So when I'm watching a film, there's a song in it, I go, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to try and remember this and see who it's from and download it. In the film, there's a bit where he's having this montage where he's getting along with his soon-to-be stepfather's kids, and he's like walking them to school and stuff like that, or whoever the fuck those kids were, and they played an orchestra version of Scar Tissue by the Chili Peppers, and it drove me fucking insane because I'm sitting there going, who the fuck's that by? Who did that? And I should have done that because sitting there trying to remember a song by an orchestra is more fun than Pete Davidson crying about his fucking dad at 9/11. Just say that killed him. Why can't he say that? Why does he go, oh, he died on 9/11? It's like, why? Because he killed himself because he's seen into the future what your fucking son was going to be? You fucking, I was going to call him a slur, but I can't be arsed editing it. Of course, we mentioned the pandemic. The sad problem about during the pandemic is that nobody ever spoke about it. It's like these days you listen to a podcast and you think, I just wish somebody would finally talk about how cancel culture is weird and you can't say what you used to. That would be really interesting, something I want to hear. Just like we all love films about the pandemic. It's so funny. So what Judd Apatow did next, get ready, I'm going to start laughing even thinking about it. He made The Bubble. Now, get ready. He made a film about actors making a film during the pandemic, and he made it during the pandemic So they were actually living in a bubble while making this film. Do you get it? Do you understand the meta? I'm laughing already. I fucking hated this film so much that I prayed for on top of AIDS with a double dose of cancer. It was as bad as it gets. And one of my biggest pet peeves in any film ever is when you see a film about the making of a film and it shows you them filming a scene, yet the scene we see in the film is completely a fully edited, CGI, scored background scene. It's like, this is fucking. Can you not just put them on green screen or some stuff? This is fucking stupid. Why did you do it, Lemmi? What did you think of it, Christian?
I'm glad you're starting with me because in true Judd Apatow fashion, I don't hate the idea of this movie. I don't hate the setup for this movie. And I think an hour would be too long, but for about the first 40 minutes, I'm like, I feel like this is working. And the one thing that I am going to commend now that the movie's finally over is they were talking about the pandemic and making jokes about it in a way that most people weren't. You know, they were the absurdity of like, oh, well, I don't need to wear a mask because I'm drinking. And there were jokes like that I was like, oh, I would expect that now. But I didn't think that, somebody like Judd Apatow was trying to make those jokes at the time. I like a lot of people in this cast. I like Karen Gillan so much. I even watched the show she did called Selfie on ABC, and it was not very good. But I support in my own way. I thought that Duchovny was kind of who he's sort of morphed into, which is like a joke version of David Duchovny, which seems to work. But in general, they lose the thread in this movie definitely by the halfway point when they're being kept too long. And there's like the Fred Armisen wearing the shield. I'm remembering as I'm talking about making the movie, some of like the shields and stuff, somebody in a helmet, stuff of that is funnier than I expected, but it just completely goes off the rails, I guess, as the movie they're making goes off the rails. There's things that you don't quite realize what's happening. They get tagged with these chips that never actually do anything with them. I thought that it was going to be like Suicide Squad and they were going to blow up one of them, but instead they just take a bad shot at Leslie Mann's hand, which is probably wish fulfillment from Judd Apatow. Probably not great at the hand stuff is what I'm getting at.
Jesus.
So this movie's not good. I have to admit that I thought that it was going to go somewhere interesting. I thought there was potential, and then they just beat me over the head with the dinosaurs a few times and said there is no potential for this movie. It's shit.
Yeah, this is the perfect example of how during the streaming boom, a lot of people figured out a way to get paid during the pandemic and not actually produce anything good. I'm still waiting for a good original streaming film apart from Unfrosted. Cayley, which starred Amy Schumer in a film about sugary food? Did she know the cameras were on? Cayley, what did you think about The Bubble?
I think that this was Judd's attempt at making a movie at how he was personally inconvenienced by the pandemic. It was not funny. It was a chore to watch. It was a satire that never actually felt satirical to me. And I hated it. I love the idea of a movie within a movie. And like you, Hughezy, the dinosaurs being as if they were already rendered in post drove me insane. They would do like these little cuts and it would be like the dinosaurs are here because we've already put them into the movie, and then it would be like the green screen guy on a string, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. None of it makes any sense, and it's so horrible. And I think that where he fell off, because obviously Judd Apatow diverted a little bit with things like The King of Staten Island and Funny People. He went more into the drama side than the comedy. This is him, I think, attempting to go back to comedy, but I think that he fails so miserably because there are no stakes here, unlike his early movies. With 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up, I think he was trying really hard to support all of his friends. He wanted Seth and Jason and all of these people to be able to have careers. And now he has success. They have success. So it feels stupid and like he doesn't give a fuck about anything. And that's what this movie was.
Did you know that Judd Apatow and Seth Rogen and another one of those guys did a script for Bad Boys 2?
Was it great?
Obviously. Lemmi, what did you think of The Bubble on All Fours?
I fucking loved this movie. I don't know if it's because all the rest of the movies I fucking hated and was bored to tears, but just the meta-ness of this movie. Cayley said it was a movie within a movie. It was a movie within a movie within a documentary. You know what I mean? I fucking loved this movie. At the beginning, I was like, oh, this is going to be like a ripoff, a direct ripoff of Tropic Thunder, so I'm going to hate it. But I ended up fucking loving it. Every character I loved. I thought that movie was fucking hilarious. And when Leslie Mann got her fucking hand shot off, I was like cheering on my little futon over here. But I thought it was a great commentary on making a movie during COVID and how ridiculous all the mandations were, and how, like, when they hired that military security team, how ridiculous all the rules got with COVID and how far they were taking, like, it being unlawful to leave. You know what I mean? They were doing that shit in like Australia, man. You know what I mean? So it provided good, relevant commentary for the times. I love good meta movies. It felt like a Judd Apatow passion project. Like, I think this would be fucking hilarious. And he made a movie that he thought would be hilarious from his perspective and all that shit. But I think it's the one Judd Apatow movie that I would very much enjoy watching again. I loved that movie. I love bad movies, though, like silly, awful, bad movies, like the rendering of the dinosaurs and it's switching to the green screen with the guys like, oh, I thought that was hysterical.
Well, the rendering of the dinosaurs has come up a few times, and it's almost like Netflix gave him too much money to make this movie. So he figured, I guess we're going to render the dinosaurs because what else am I going to do with it? They won't let me keep it. I guess I'm going to have to spend it. And this is one of the most shocking things I've ever heard a woman say. I might need a blanket placed over me after this, Lemmi.
I'm so happy that Lemmi likes this movie because this whole episode I've been like, oh my God, everybody's going to hate me because I disagree with everybody. But now Lemmi likes The Bubble, so I don't even have the worst opinion of this entire episode. It's wonderful news.
I am ashamed, okay? I am very ashamed.
I gotta be honest, the way that you just described it, you made me like it a little bit more. You were very convincing.
Well,
I don't think it was supposed to be an outstanding movie. I think it was just supposed to be a fun little passion project that was supposed to be just silly.
Well, I could maybe make you something that would ruin it for you, that if this is like a meta film that Judd Apatow wrote and directed, his daughter played the TikTok influencer that he filmed and directed doing the I don't know if she's legal age, so I don't know if I could say it, but Christian told me to say that it was a sexy dance. And to me, that was just like, So he's locked in a bubble with his daughter and he's getting her to do stuff that he thinks is sexy. And it's like, I think Judd Apatow likes cheesy pizza.
Well, I have good news. I've just looked up Iris Apatow. She was born 12 October 2002. So whenever this movie was made, she was maybe just 18. And that's too old for Hughezy.
Oh, yeah. She'll never get on my Compound Media show now. I think we should all just go to the verdict. Lemmi, does Judd Apatow suck?
Yes, he sucks very long-windedly. Yes. If I could make a 3.5 hour long movie that I could edit down into 2.5 hours, I'd make a 2.5 hour long movie about how much Judd Apatow sucks.
Nice. Have you ever heard of, there was what's the guy Brian Callen?
Yes.
He made a film called The Superbad 40-Year-Old Virgin Who Walked Hard and Forgot Sarah Marshall, which is a parody of Judd Apatow films, and it's even worse than... No, actually, it's not. It's better than The Bubble. I'm going to watch it tonight. Cayley, does Judd Apatow suck?
Yes, he sucks. He was good with TV, but he is a horrible filmmaker. He's a fine producer. Freaks and Geeks was awesome. Undeclared was pretty great. He was great as a writer on the Larry Sanders Show, but he is the worst director ever. Maybe not ever, but he's up there.
Even his TV work isn't doing so well, apart from Crashing. Hey guys, did you ever see that one episode where Pete Holmes learned about comedy and also himself at the same time?
I think I saw that one.
It's a great episode.
I didn't like that one.
Yeah, it needed someone to walk into the living room. Christian, does Judd Apatow suck?
Yeah, I have to say he's not a good director. And I think that the fact that we were like, well, his first movie is kind of his least terrible in some ways. Except, of course, for Lemmi, who liked The Bubble. And, again, I agree for part of the movie, but I'm shocked. I'm still recovering from that. I think, but like we all agree, he's terrible. He's not the worst director. He's not Brett Ratner. So, he's definitely not the worst director that I can think of. So, but as I mentioned on our little text thread, thank you so much, Hughezy, because thanks to this show, you've really fucked up my Netflix algorithm because I watched The Bubble and both of those Zack Snyder Rebel Moon movies. So now Netflix is convinced that the only thing that I want to ever watch is shit. So I'll do a screenshot of my recommendations the next time I'm in there. And it's all your fault, Hughezy.
I'm pumped. Let's do some plugs. Lemmi, 69 what?
Come check us out on BYB_pod on YouTube. Fucking BYB podcast. Fucking rules. And check me out on Twitch. Little Lemmi at Twitch. I do a morning show. Pretty cool.
And her social media links will be linked down below. Christian?
Well, you can find me on the Who Are These Podcasts Network, the YouTube channel for Who Are These Broadcasters, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, with my co-host Eric Zane, except for the recent episode where we were joined by Trucker Andy, who thankfully has stopped calling himself Andy Q Public. I'd like to think you had a hand in that, Cayley, because that was a stupid name. But also, Hughezy was on that episode. So if you find the episode, the first one we did in July, I guess July 2nd, you'll be able to see Hughezy on that show. And you were slightly less racist on that show than you usually are here. So I appreciate you dialing it in a little bit.
Thank you.
And I have my own podcast, the Blackcast, BLADTCAST. Everyone on this show has been on at least once, and we'll probably be on about 10 more times before the end of the year. So BLADTCAST.
Excellent. Before I rub it in that I'm going to see AC/DC next August in exactly 30 days, Cayley, what plugs do you have for the boys and for the freaks and the geeks? Give it up.
Amazing. So you can check me out on YouTube. I do a show called Once Over with Cayley where I review movies. Very fun and exciting stuff. I also just recently released my first popsicle review on YouTube. Usually popsicles reviews are exclusive to my Patreon, which is also Once Over with Cayley. You can also check me out on Who Are These Podcasts? And of course, a couple of exciting live events coming up soon. I will be at DabbleCon 2.
DabbleCon.
Where you
and
can
I owe you
get
67?
Tickets. Yes. And you can get tickets for DabbleCon 2 at WATPlive.com. And I will also be at VHS Fest in Mahoning for watching a whole bunch of movies. So if you guys are at either of those things, I'd love to meet you.
I haven't been to VHS Fest, but when I went to see Spice World, they somehow showed it on VHS over the cinema screen, and it really had a weirdly great effect. And plus, I was fucking hammered. I want to thank everybody for coming on. I want to say R.I.P. to Judd Apatow's film career, as it seems to be. Maybe he'll direct Ant-Man 4. Maybe he'll do something with Paul Rudd. I actually would go see that. Maybe he'll do the next Ghostbusters. Who knows? He could resurrect the ghost of his career. Right, Lemmi?
Right.
Right. And that's the end of Judd Apatow. He died off in DVDs, died off. Fuck him and his kid who's in Euphoria, who I suspect will be naked in season 3.